Whenever the rumors began circulating the web of Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games potentially coming to Switch, and the announcement of Pokemon Stadium coming to the service aired, I had one thing on my mind. Yo! Pokemon Stadium! Bro, that means Game Boy's coming! That means Game Boy's coming! Yes, the mainline Pokemon games coming to the Switch. And no, I'm not just talking about Red, Blue, Yellow, and Gold, Silver, Crystal. I'm also talking about Fire Red and Leaf Green and Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald. That was a mouthful to say. I have a bunch of different reasons why I think these games will eventually release on Nintendo Switch Online, and some of them very soon. And here's why. But before we start the video, it would mean the world to me if you could subscribe. If you love Nintendo content, you will love this channel. And on with the video.
Sunrise.
Pokemon Day is fastly approaching, and we now know that we will be getting a presents on that specific day with maybe some more info on Scarlet and Violet DLC, some new Pokemon, and the announcements that Pokemon Stadium is coming to Nintendo Switch Online. Now, we already have confirmation that both games will come to the service this year, and the presents is the perfect time to announce a release date, or maybe even shadow drop the first one. Now, Pokemon Stadium is not the same without the connectivity to the original games. That was the original point of it, to bring the Pokemon you've journeyed with from the handheld games to the big screen. And yes, I know you can play the game without it, and yes, in the original trailer it did say Pokemon could not be transferred to this game, but this was before the announcement of the Game Boy games coming to the service. And also, if you watch a recent trailer by the Japanese channel, this disclaimer is gone. And shout out to Jake from Game Explain, by the way, it's through his video that I was actually made aware of this. But even if this is just looking too deeply into things, why would Nintendo not bring these games to the service? Before, it just seemed like they would never bring back the old games, but that changed with the 3DS. They have been ported over before and had connectivity to Pokemon Bank. So at the very least, why would they not bring these iconic games over to the Switch with home connectivity? And better yet, Stadium connectivity. Nintendo is trying so hard to push Nintendo Switch Online, and some people are still not convinced that the service is worth it. And if all these games are added to the base tier, I think the argument goes straight out the window, even though that I personally think that the base tier is worth it now. Or maybe they just want them to release separately on the eShop. It's a possibility, but at the same time, I just don't see them bringing over Stadium and not the original games without connecting them. It just doesn't make sense. We all know they'll have online functionality and home connectivity. The 3DS ones did this, so these will too. And of course, the same applies for Pokemon Gold, Silver, Crystal with Stadium 2. We know these games work flawlessly on the Switch. We know Nintendo want to push this service, so why would they not add them? So I think people are pretty mixed on whether or not the original Game Boy games will come over. I personally think that in this particular presents, they will announce Red, Blue, and Yellow, maybe shadow dropping with Stadium on the same day, or maybe they just shadow drop Red, Blue, and Yellow and then release Stadium a few weeks later so people have had the time to play the games, you know, gather some Pokemon and then transfer them to Pokemon Stadium. And I could see them doing the same with Gold, Silver, Crystal and Stadium 2, maybe a few months away sometime in the summer. I don't know. I think with them being on the 3DS eShop, which is of course closing soon, also helps to convince people. But what about the Game Boy Advance games? What about Fire Red and Leaf Green and Ruby, Sapphire and Emerald? These titles have never seen a re-release before, and yes, I know Fire Red and Leaf Green are just remakes of the original, but we want them to. Can you imagine the amount of money Nintendo and the Pokemon Company would make if these games came to the expansion pack? Could you imagine how many people would finally upgrade from the base tier or just buy Switch Online for the first time in general? Nintendo knows that people love these games. Also, with home connectivity and online play, it would be groundbreaking. The games work, they've been tested, everything here is waiting, ready to go. So what are they waiting for? These games are old now. It's not like they can just sell them separately for $60, although that's such a Nintendo thing to do. So again, I don't think we'll get all of these games released at the same time, all announced in the Direct necessarily, or the presents I should say. But I do think Red, Blue and Yellow with Stadium is on its way. Gold, Silver, Crystal with Stadium 2 is most likely going to be towards, you know, the middle of the year. I don't see them just bringing Red, Blue and Yellow over. Why wouldn't they bring Gold, Silver and Crystal over? And we know Stadium 2 is already coming. And with the Game Boy Advance games, I honestly think there's a slight chance they could get shown in this presents. It is a lot to take in all at once, but they could maybe be teased at the end or something like that. I honestly don't know, but if we were to get the Game Boy Advance games, I think it's more likely maybe that they would get announced towards the end of the year and released at the end of the year. But at the very least, if they are teased in this Presents in some way, shape or form, it will probably have a release date of sort of towards the end of the year or something like that. Now, if I was to take a guess of the likelihood of this happening, I would say the Game Boy games have like an 80% chance, and I think that the Game Boy Advance games have maybe a 40% chance. I really want them to happen, but it's honestly not that obvious if they're going to do it or not. Who knows? A man can dream, and the Presents is less than a week away at this point, so I guess we're going to find out sooner rather than later. And also, like a lot of my content, this video is either going to age extremely well or extremely poorly. Guess we'll have to wait and find out.
Sunrise.